Hello, everyone, and welcome to Healthy at Work. My name is Catherine Wilcox, a workplace health specialist with a big passion for helping people thrive at work. From the home office to the corporate office, from the assembly line to the front line, I've got you covered here for your healthiest life at work. Now let's dive into today's show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healthy at Work. My name is Catherine. I'm your host of Healthy at Work, and this week we are talking about layoffs. Now, layoffs are top of mind for many working Canadians. Some of you may have already been laid off. Some of you may have received a letter or some kind of notice. Some of you might just be worried, even if you have a job that's secure at this time, that something could change in this particular economic climate. So, I wanted to do an episode talking about some ways that we can support ourselves if we are navigating impacts related to layoffs, because it is a pretty psychologically, emotionally impactful experience for anybody to go through. So, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the importance of really giving yourself some time and space to feel your feelings. Now, when we lose a relationship of any kind, including a employment relationship, it is normal to feel sad. It's normal to feel angry. It's normal to feel anxious about what's yet to come. We can have all kinds of emotional reactions. Some people might even feel, relief or excitement, depending on what was going on in that particular employment relationship and what is, to come for them. Maybe they have something lined up or they want to use this as an opportunity to do something different. So there's a real range of different emotions that people can be experiencing and having. And if there are uncomfortable emotions that you are experiencing, I think it's really important to give ourselves permission to just feel that. Sometimes when we are in an emotionally uncomfortable experience, we want to try to get through it as quickly as possible, right? I know many of you listening or watching have very likely, as human beings, lost things and people that are important to you. And so you likely know that, grief is a process, it's a journey. There are ups and downs. There's some days where you may feel better than others, more optimistic than others. This is part of, the cycle of recovery from grief. So allow that. You're a human being. Your feelings are part of what make you human. So just, allowing ourselves the opportunity to feel what we're feeling and not to rush to the other side of feeling better, right? To the other side of, okay, I'm going to get all my energy together and go out there and, we try so hard sometimes to get through things quickly, but we skip the emotional processing that's often required, right, in order to get to where we're going, to the next thing in a good way. So it's okay to have feelings, and encourage you to use whatever tools, supports, resources that you find useful and helpful to help you, in processing some of those feelings. Seeking support, talking to family, friends, people that you trust. Some of us have other practices like journaling, maybe exercise, the things that work for you to help you emotionally process. I really encourage you to think about doing those things during this time. And, as we move through this, initial, part of the grief process, when we lose a job, again, we might have, strong emotional reactions. We might feel shocked or numbed, or I can't believe this is happening to me. As we begin to emerge from that over time, and there is no specific timeline, that, we can say, okay, by this time you should be feeling this way. It's different for every person. But as, things begin to shift and change, you might notice that you have a bit more capacity, right? To take some initial action. So things like updating your resume, reaching out to workplace contacts. If you have a side hustle or something that you've been doing in the past, to bring in extra income, is there the possibility of scaling that up? This sort of planning stage, tends to kind of come online once, we're in a bit more of an emotionally regulated state. So, thinking about your supports, your resources, Can you connect with a career counselor? Do you have access, still to extended health benefits if you're, thinking about a pending layoff? Do you still have access to employee and family assistance programs? Is there any career support available there? Was there, as part of your severance package, if that was included? So beginning to think about, okay, what are my supports? What are my resources? What are some of the initial actions that I can begin to take, which tend to help us reclaim some of our power. The other thing I want to put out there is that I know it's really hard for many of us not to feel as though our value as humans comes from our work. We live in a capitalist society and system that tells us over and over that we are valuable for what we produce. So it's difficult when we lose employment, when we lose a job, to not feel as though our value is being called into question somehow. This is very common. And so, some of the questions I would encourage you to sit with if you're feeling that way is who you are beyond the work that you do. Who loves you? Who do you love? What are these important relationships that you have in your life? What are your hobbies and interests and some of the things outside of work that make your life worth living? What communities are you a part of? Who do you belong to? Um, if you have a faith or a spiritual practice or tradition, what does that look like in your life? What type of meaning and support and purpose does that provide? It can be really helpful during this time to remind ourselves that we are so much more than our job and what we do for work. And bolstering up these other areas of life can also resource us and support us as we navigate through something as difficult as a layoff. The last thing I wanted to explore today as we think about how to support ourselves if we've been laid off or we anticipate being laid off or if we're just worried that that might happen is to really do some examination around some of our core beliefs about our worth and value and power. Now, if this is a new concept for you, the idea of core beliefs and core wounds comes from, this sense of our early lives and what it is that we learn about ourselves from our early environments. So, some examples of core beliefs that can get activated when we lose someone or something that's important to us are things like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm powerless, I'm defective. So our shame wounding can really become activated. And so noticing these types of messages that we might be giving ourselves or that can get triggered when we experience what some of us might interpret as a rejection, right, of us and who we are, or a loss. So if you notice these types of thoughts, and they might not come across as explicit as some of the examples that I just shared with you, right? I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm powerless, I'm defective. You might not actually be thinking and hearing those types of thoughts in your head. For some of us, our core wounds are more felt, right? They're more emotional. We know what powerlessness feels like in our body. We know what shame feels like. And they could be related to, again, the story we're really telling ourselves about who we are. So, really important to be on the lookout for that because, again, when we lose something that's important to us, or when we make the meaning of a loss to mean that we're rejected and there's something wrong and bad about us, that can be really painful, and that can pull in all kinds of coping behaviors. And other core beliefs as well that can be pretty painful. So, if you're noticing anything like that, I really do encourage you to reach out, to seek support, to seek care. In the ways that work best for you to assist you with navigating through that because it can be pretty painful. So, just to summarize some of the strategies that I've talked about today, really encourage you to give yourself some time and space to feel what you're feeling around this. A layoff, can activate a grief process. So not rushing through the cycle, the process. It's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay to grieve, a job. Being proactive as you have energy or as you find yourself navigating through the process that you're in. So what are your resources? What are your supports? What are some small actions that you might be able to take as you start to look towards the future? And then, also reminding ourselves that our value as humans does not come exclusively from what we do for work. So, looking to other sources of validation and value, things like our relationships, our communities, who we belong to, as a way of bolstering us during this time. And then really being on the lookout for some of our core wounding, which can very easily get activated in processes such as a layoff. So that's it for today. Lovely to be with you. Until next time, I hope you'll take great care of yourself and each other. And if you are interested in learning more about some of the services that I offer, I encourage you to visit feedthelionwellness.com. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now. Thanks for listening today. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not medical advice or mental health treatment. If you're struggling at work, please reach out to the supports within your workplace or community. This podcast was gratefully recorded on the unceded and ancestral homelands of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations.